I get the pleasure. I'm Olivia Hereford. I'm Associate Director at embarked. And I have the pleasure of introducing my friend and colleague, Brenda Wilkerson. And I had to bring this up because I had to read this long title. Senior Manager, Computer Science and Information Technology Education, Office of College and Career Success, Computer Success for All. The key thing missing here is that Brenda comes to us from Chicago Public Schools. She is a Baytech partner in a Baytech's initiative to promote ICT pathways in urban areas, large where the school districts have a large inner city populations. And she has been a tremendous trailblazer in promoting computer science and computing, exploring computer science in Chicago Public Schools. She has been my mentor and colleague in trying to make that happen here in San Francisco with our ICT Education Pathways Project. And again, I want to thank Baytech for the support in that work. But I think one of the reasons I wanted to make this introduction is that this is this is a first at embarked where we are talking about success in K through 12 and getting kids on those pathways. And I also want to point out that on this agenda, there are 6 sessions related to ICT pathways, K-12 to community college. And I really urge you to attend 1 or 2 of those at least, because one of the things that we're finding that are very effective in these pathways programs are putting together K-12 teachers with community college teachers to understand the linkage in the pathways and how important it is for you all to know what your feeder schools are doing. So anyway, without further ado, Brenda.
Well, thank you so much, Olivia, for that introduction. It was very kind. And I'd also like to thank James for giving me this opportunity to speak with you today. And also all of my Baytech colleagues, Pierre, Deborah, thank you for all the work and investment that you've made into the lives of the children in the city of Chicago. So I bring you greetings. Good morning. Good morning. You know, we're from, you know, where we say good morning to our students and they respond back. So, good morning, teacher. So, and being from the Midwest, I'm so excited to be here to talk to you, especially I'm enjoying this weather because it's 5 degrees at home. And so I'm glad to be here. So I'm going to be talking about the crisis. And there definitely is a crisis. And, you know, I don't really have to give a lot of speech to what the crisis is. My colleagues before have already done a great job. James really enumerated all of the instances and all of the reasons why what we're doing here is so very important. We know that technology is the engine that fuels our society. It fuels innovation, our way of life. It's the thing that makes us global. And so when I thought about what I wanted to talk about today, I started to give you a bunch of stats to prove to you that we indeed have a crisis and there's work to be done, but thankfully, James took care of that and did a much better job than I could have. And I also want to say to Steve, where's Steve? K-12 is on the job. We are answering the call. And so what I wanted to do is share with you today what is going on in Chicago in our part of the crisis. Because the crisis is both about industry as well as education. Education has to step up and answer the call. And we've heard great examples today about how here in California, here on the West Coast, that's being done. And we're doing some work too in Chicago. But whether you're from industry, which is where I started out, and I also like to step back and introduce myself again in the way that I introduce myself to people that I speak to in Chicago, whether I'm speaking to the board or I'm speaking to city leadership or if I'm speaking to school leadership or teachers, I say, hello, I'm Brenda Wilkerson, and I'm a computer scientist. Now you may wonder, now why do I introduce myself that way? Well, I'll help you understand a little more as I go on. So I come from industry initially, and I'll talk about my background in a little bit. And this is an issue that impacts not just, in order for us to move the needle in education, we also need to talk about how we link up with our colleagues in industry. Because they have issues. They're the recipients of what we're going to do in our environment. Whether they're big companies or whether they're entrepreneurial. You know, I gave a talk at one spot, and afterwards, when I was speaking with some of the people who had attended, there was one gentleman that came up to me, and he said to me, he said, hey, Brenda, here's what I need you to do. I need you to make me some computer scientists. Now, by the way, I'll use computer science, I'll use IT, I'll use ICT. To me, we're all in this together. So I'm referring to all of us. I'm referring to every part of our industry. So when he said that to me, I said, okay, I can do that, but help me understand more what you're talking about. And it turns out he was from Groupon. And Groupon has a big location in Chicago. He said, I've got 202 openings. I want you to come over and see my location. If 202 skilled computer scientists walked through the door, I'd hire them today. So I went and visited, and I saw this big ocean of desks and computers, and they were empty. There were a few people there, all men, by the way. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go back, and I'm going to go to that work. Because no matter where we are, we have a part that we can play. So now, most people, back where I come from, don't talk about it as a CS crisis or an ICT crisis. They talk about it as a STEM crisis. And there is no way, and the reason why I show this slide is because I believe there is no way that that's the case. We're the only ones in STEM where demand outstrips supply. Everybody else has pretty much been going along this pathway okay. It's not that they shouldn't work. Absolutely, if that's what they need to do, they can. But I would need us to focus, we know that we are focusing, right in the right place, which is in ICT. So in Chicago, what we decided to do was to identify our part in the crisis. What had we contributed to this problem? Because see, I believe it's just a good old-fashioned supply and demand problem. It's the pipeline. And if you think about it, K through 12, we're the beginning of that pipeline. And we, as someone so elegantly put it today, have not been doing our part. And what we wanted to do was step up and make that change and make it happen. Now, the good news is I believe we can do it. And I believe we can, and we are already on our way. And I want to share with you how that's working for us. Now, this project is very near and dear to my heart. I've spent my entire work life in tech in one capacity or another. And it's afforded me some very interesting experiences that help me know just how important addressing this problem is. I've also gotten to work shoulder to shoulder with others who share my beliefs. And it's inspired me to know that I will do whatever it takes to get that job done in Chicago. Because let's face it, it's going to take all of us doing our part where we are to move this needle. So for the next several minutes, I want to talk about how things have been going in Chicago. But before I do, I want to tell you a little bit about my background. Because it's by a curious route that I stand here before you today. And it's odd, though, but in an accidental kind of way, it informs my perspective. I've learned some key lessons, and they serve me in my work. And I hope that they speak to you as well. So I grew up one of 4 children whose parents were educators, high school teachers. My father taught journalism, my mother taught business. They taught in the high school that I attended. You can feel sorry for me. Yeah, it was hard. Okay. In our house, we grew up under very high expectations. We had to be something serious. We were all very artsy, but we couldn't do that. We had to be doctor, lawyer, fill in the blank. Well, pretty early on, I decided that I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to practice medicine. I knew what I didn't want to do, though, and that was to be a teacher or have anything to do with education. Okay. I had watched my parents, hardworking people, with 35 students per class, 20 minutes for lunch, work really, really hard. And it seemed really thankless. I even spent time on picket lines when they were fighting for resources to do the job that they did. I thought, no way, I'm not interested in that. And I was very vocal about it. But I tell you, I learned an incredible work ethic from growing up under them. I learned that it takes hard work. I watched them really, really pour into the lives of their students. And the one thing that I noticed, I thought it was normal, is that to teach, to be an educator, you had to really, really get to know your students. You had to really care about them and love them, and you had to understand where they were and where they were going. So the first lesson that serves me every single day is, if you're going to be in education, do it out of love and have expectation that every student can succeed. I carry that with me now. So off to college I went, and there was an accident there. Now, I was pre-med, remember, and in my university, there was no pre-med major. You had to choose a degree that satisfied those requirements. So I chose biomedical engineering. Now, you may say, well, I thought you were a computer scientist. Well, at the time, I knew nothing about computers. I hadn't been introduced to them at all. That was not the track that I was on in high school. But as luck would have it, all engineering majors had to take 2 programming courses. And as I continued my quest toward studying medicine, the practice of which became less and less attractive to me, I took more and more programming classes. And you know what I found out? I kind of liked them. And not only that, I was kind of good at it. So it changed my perspective. It changed my direction. It became an option for me, one I hadn't even known that I had. And after graduation, I've spent half of my career in industry as a software developer, doing the things that software developers do and loving it. But I came to it by accident. Now, I want that to sink in because the first crisis that I want to share with you today that I think we're addressing in Chicago is a crisis of opportunity. If you talk to a lot of other women, at least women my age, that are in technology, you'll hear similar stories. It was an accident by which they found out that they could be technologists. And one of the things that I want to make sure in Chicago is that no other student experiences that. So anyway, as time passed, I went to work, I got married, and when I was pregnant with our first baby, I was still wearing that beeper. It was going off in the middle of the night. I said, it's like one of those times when you start to think, is there something else I could do with my life? And I'd had the fortune of befriending a person who became a really good friend of mine. She was dean of a community college in Chicago. She ran a very dynamic worker retraining program. And there I failed. So she recruited me to teach a few classes in her continuing ed computer training division. And I thought, teach now? I told my parents I was never going to have anything to do with education. Can I go home and say that I'm doing this? But I decided to try it. And so I started with a couple of classes. I went after those classes with all the gusto that I had. They were just introductory application classes. One was in, I'm going to date myself, WordPerfect and Lotus 123. Y'all remember that? Okay. But I failed them. You say, well, how did I fail them? Well, I taught them as one who could program a computer to people who didn't know how to turn on a computer. I totally missed them. But I didn't know that until the last day of the class because I was going at it and they were polite and they didn't really raise their hands a lot. But when I figured it out, I remember I went home to my husband and I confessed I failed. I failed them. But here's what I learned. I remembered to teach means that you get to know your student, you get to know your customer, what they need, you get to know where it is they're trying to go, and you chart a path from here to there. And so I did that. And in fact, eventually I became the director of that department. I got the opportunity to work very closely with workforce development. We put together WEA programs that trained thousands of students. It was a wonderful experience training adults to start out new careers in technology. So the lesson that I took from that into the work that I do today is know your customers' needs. So now, let's fast forward to CPS. When I was brought to CPS, I got the opportunity to work in their education department around technology skills for students. It was a new area for me. I'd never worked with students or not that undergraduate students, but K through 12 students, and this work actually started out in the high schools. So what I found there was that there really wasn't any computer science, which is what I was trained in, maybe a little bit. At the high-end schools, a handful of the students who were seniors, again, mostly male, got to learn AP computer science. But they also had information technology programs. And those information technology programs all rested under career and technical education. And so I was brought in to do that work. So here's how it looked. There were 66 high schools that had programs. 85% of them, though, were Microsoft Office apps. The students were just learning Microsoft Word. If they were lucky, they might have gotten to Excel or PowerPoint. About half of the rest of it were hardware and networking classes where students got the opportunity to get A+ certifications or Net+ certifications, and the other half were computer programming classes. So this is how it looked. The other part of it that was interesting to me was why that was. Why was it that most of the classes that we called IT were not really IT at all? And why were there so few teachers who weren't male teaching the really technical classes? So it was very interesting because it kind of mirrored everything that I had seen in undergraduate school. It mirrored what I had seen at the community college. You had women in the businessy kind of classes, and you had the men in all of the really tech stuff. And, really just those few, weird ones like me who would just kind of slog through. So I thought, here's the next crisis. It's a crisis of identity. What really is IT? What is CS? What is ICT? We know what it means. Most people don't get it. So the biggest job for me was to demystify this for our public. So I went to work. I knew what my work was. It was to understand the tasks, help people understand what IT really was, because I was really excited for it. I'm a nerd. I was really excited. I knew what the opportunities were. I had been out there. I needed to make sure then that we transitioned to real IT programs, that students got the opportunity so that they had the options that I knew waited for them out there. And when we did it, it had to be done equitably. Anybody who wanted to learn needed to get to learn. So those were my goals. So here's what my faculty looked like, as I shared with you. Most of the people who were doing the really nerdy stuff were the men. And so what I had to do was take that faculty and say, let's all learn something new. But to do that, now I had two customers. Not just the students, but they were also the teachers, to convince them that, yeah, you can do this. It's really fun. You can learn this. It's okay. And to convince their administrators that when I taught them really high-skilled stuff, that they wouldn't just leave and go to industry. And it's funny, most of them didn't. Most of them have learned, they've stayed. So in order to do that, I thought, it's time for allies. I can't do this alone. So I went and I reached out, and I've only got a few names up here from industry, but I reached out to industry, and everybody called. Everybody said, yes, I'll help you. What kind of help did I need? I needed to know, what do I teach these students? They're young, okay? It's different at college. We can say to them, here, get these skills, and they can go right to work. But these kids, they're 14. Some of them, if they go to four-year universities, they were not going to reach into industry for 8 years, 7 years. So how do we put them on a pathway? How do we give them something meaningful to get them ready for the opportunities out there? Hey, colleges, what is it that you'd like for them to know so that they can be successful when they go to undergraduate school, so they know what options are out there and they can choose from them? And so these are just some of the people that helped me have this conversation. But you know, one of the things that I really needed, and thank God I found, was a core group of people who believed as much as I did. Because you know, it's so fun to be here today. We all are excited. We know what we're doing. We know why we're doing it, and we're getting to do it, and we're seeing results, right? We've got students that we're making that transition for. But back when we started, it seems like 20 years ago, but it was only 5 years ago. Most people were going, what are you talking about, Brenda? It's not like out here on the West Coast. We didn't believe we had a technology. We were a technology town. We didn't think those types of things impacted us. So we really had to sell. So these were the people who really stood with us, and these represent some of the universities in town. So what did I ask them to do? I asked them to help me figure out what to teach. What do I teach? Not just the students, but the teachers. What do I do? How do I professionally develop my staff so that they are excited and can turn the lights on for the students? You know, once I got over my failure at the community college, one of the things that I felt I brought to the table was the excitement that I had about what we do. And so I'd have students, this was fun, this was the new thing that I started to get back from students, was at the end of the class, they'd come up to me and they'd say, you know, I had no idea what you were talking about the first couple days. But you were so excited about it, I thought I'd hang out and figure out, you know, find out, okay? So I brought that excitement and I would turn the lights on, and when I would go visit teachers who were unsure, those lights were not getting turned on because they didn't know, they were afraid. So I asked my industry partners and my allies, what do we do to help them understand what's exciting so that they get excited and then they turn the lights on for the students, because I'm only one administrator and we've got a bunch of students. I'm going to tell you how many in a minute. So our allies were there for us. This was a multi-stranded approach. We all had a part to play and they all had to be on the bus. And together they helped fuel the vision for our big, hairy, audacious goal, which was computer science for everybody. Not just a few people, not just certain select kids, everybody. So now here are the results of that collaboration. We went from what we had been doing before. These were the pathways that we had, and I gave you the breakdown of them, which were largely user pathways, to new, exciting ways of doing some of the same things. Computer programming became game programming just because it was the hook for the students. We were still teaching those same skills. We wanted to make them excited. You know, kids are not like we were. We would just sit and do what the teacher said. I remember that. My mother was like, right? Whether it was fun or not. Now we've got to make it relevant for students. And so we were able to, as our advisory council helped us figure out, put together pathways that would not only give them the rigor, but would give them the relevance. It was a collaborative effort. All of us working together. What do our students need? And it was fun, it was energizing, because everybody had a stake. Everybody had a part to play. And not just for our students, but for our teachers and our administrators, because you know what? They've got a lot of things to do. Why should they take this risk? Why should they do it? No one else is doing it. If you look around at the time, everybody else was staying in their lane. No one was branching out saying, I think I'll do this, and I think I'll do it for everybody. So why should they? So I asked industry, and they would go out and talk. I'd have them go out and be an example. And as a computer scientist, I wanted to be an example that, yes, women can do it too. Look at me. And I asked Googles and the Microsofts to bring out people to help not only our students, but also our teachers go, oh, okay, I guess my students can also do this as well. So here's what our sequences look like. Because most of this work started under CTE, we had a 3-year course sequence. And one of the significant changes we made is that everyone, no matter what pathway they were in, started with one core course, which turned out to be exploring computer science. We took the work that the folks did in LA, and we adopted it to Chicago because we thought it made a whole lot of sense. Student-centered, project-based, and the professional development for the teachers was really the key. That was the thing that changed how the work was done. It changed their perspective. Now, after they got all of those nice 5 pillars of IT, then they could branch off. And we saw the staying power in the pathways because they got those introductions, they had a better idea of what to do next. Most of our schools, we suggested that they have more than one pathway. So for instance, if they have gaming and web, they start off with this nice introduction. They'd have a better idea by the end of the year which one they wanted to do versus starting off in that pathway in the first place. And one of the things that was exciting is we found that as we were building capacity, we were also building appetite. Many of our schools decided to push this forward. We had originally started sophomore year and then done junior and senior year in the focus areas. Many of our schools now have pushed this forward. They do ECS in the freshman year, and that gives them time to still get to APCS in the senior year. So that's pretty exciting. So we had new sequences, they had rigor. We also worked to do articulations and certifications. Everybody was getting on board, excitement was increasing. Did we solve the problem? Landmine. We went into the land of mythology, and James brought this up earlier. Well, wait, it's a lot of change, and when you have a lot of change, people get afraid. And so they start looking back for the things that can prove why we shouldn't do this, right? So games, are they going to play games? Kids already play games. What do you mean games? Programmer, I thought the BLS says that those are on the downturn. Wait, didn't all those jobs get offshored? So then we had to go back and re-educate in that direction. And again, that's where we needed our allies. Coming from universities, it makes a lot more sense to a principal. Yeah, this is college prep, by the way, if your student learns this. This is good. We want them to do this. It was interesting. We had one of our allies at UIC came to us and said, look, we are offering $10,000, $40,000 scholarships to any student that you have who will major in CS. And this was right in the beginning to show we're behind this, we believe in it. We only got 9 applications. People still did not believe that they could do it. So we had to work. On top of that, schools have competing priorities. If you're going to go after K-12 districts, understand there's all this other stuff. First there was Common Core, and that scared them to death. They're still freaking out about that. And there's all the stuff about literacy, and even my teachers have to teach students how to read while they teach them the technology. There's all this stuff about scores. It's stuff after stuff after stuff. And I don't know if you've heard or not, but in Chicago, we're into this cycle of every single year having $1 billion shortfall. $1 billion. That's a lot. And guess what happens? Guess what gets cut? The stuff that's optional. So you remember I told you we started out with over 66, we had 66 programs, 66 schools, more programs than that, multiple programs per school. Every single year, this is what happened. When the budget came out, guess what went? The elective, because that's what we qualified for. So that brings me to the next priority in crisis. Crisis of priorities. You can have great programs. You can have great relationships. You can be wildly enthusiastic and have a lot of passion and excitement. You could have the whole world on your side. But if it's not a priority for the district, they're not going to do it. And guess what's priority? Ooh, that was fun. Core. Core is priority. So we're going, oh wow, okay, we can't keep going down, down, down. We got these wonderful programs. And really, our students were doing great things. They were figuring it out. They were excited. I had calls from parents saying, you know, I don't know what's going on in that program over there, but Johnny stays up all night long. He's on his computer and he's creating those games and stuff. Okay. These are successes. But we had to figure out what to do. Well, we were still figuring out what to do, but two miracles occurred. The first miracle was this guy got replaced with this guy. Now, I don't know if you know who that is. That's Richie Daley, who was our mayor forever. I mean, he didn't care that much about technology, so we weren't getting any support from our mayor's office. In fact, we were almost contrary to what it was he wanted to do. But then Rahm Emanuel came aboard, and all he talks about is tech. So we were able to leverage that political muscle that said, yes, we should do it, yes, we should do it, like, yes, yes, we should do it. The other miracle that occurred was the video. Everybody's seen the video, right? The code.org video with all of these people, these stars, these tech leaders, billionaires saying, everyone should code. It was really funny because where we were selling, we need more IT, not less IT. We need more students doing this. We were really very fanatical about it. All of a sudden, I was getting the calls. Hey, Brenda, do you have coding? Where do you have coding in the district? We got calls from the press. Do you guys have coding in the district? Do you guys do coding? But here's the funniest call I got. When we started to get calls from principals, hey, do we have coding? Where's their coding? Especially the one where the principal had IT in his building. But that goes back to that crisis of identity. He didn't identify. We still have to figure out how to tell people what it is we do. We're not there yet. They didn't get it. And for whatever it's worth, this helped people figure out something that they could wrap their arms around and something that they could get excited about. We were now relevant, and we could do this work. So now here's how it's turned out. We got to launch this thing called Computer Science for All. And what that meant was you didn't have to be part of a CTE program to learn computer science. That means all schools could have computer science. And initially, we thought we would just do it in the high schools. But as it turns out, we decided to go K through 12. And our K through 8 brethren, they're the most excited. Who knew? So here's our mission. The important parts of these I want you to remember is equity. It's about equity. It's about helping people understand that they can be part of the problem because, you know what? They can be part of the solution. Because 1 million jobs, that's a lot. 1 million good jobs that can help our students, as Olivia shared, most of our students are free and reduced lunch. Most of our students have been told what they can't do. With CS, with ICT, with IT, there's plenty for them to do. So equity is very important. We know with these skills they will be empowered. Even if they don't become a nerd, they will be better global citizens because, let's face it, it's technology that makes us global. And they will be committed professionals. The most important thing is they'll have choices. They'll have options. That's what I teach my children. The definition of freedom is options. So here are our goals, you know, those big, hairy, audacious goals. Here's how they've materialized. We want to have at least one computer science course in every high school within 3 years. We'd like to introduce computer science concepts into 25% of our elementary schools within 5. And here's 2 priorities: a graduation requirement within 5 years. Running computer science as core. I'm sorry, Brenda, could you raise the mic? Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So here's what Chicago Public School looks like. We have 664 schools. About a quarter of them are high schools, the rest are elementary schools. And so our goal of having every high school, we're on our way. And here's our status. What we did is put together a competitive application. We wanted schools, those who were good first-timers, those who were good early adopters, to be the ones to start. We wanted them to raise their hands and say, yes, I'll do it. And so we put together the first cohort, and they started with their students this past September, and that was 24 elementaries and 22 high schools. We're right in the process of forming cohort 2. I've got applications to read in the room tonight. And what we're looking to do is bring on 30 elementary and 25 additional high schools. Under CTE, our progress has been that we were serving up to 9,000 students a year. We started 5 early college STEM schools, 9 to 14 schools that gave students the opportunity to go for an associate's degree in some IT pathway within 6 years. But as I shared with you, we were decreasing in the number of schools. So last year, we were serving only 6,000 students. But they were going gung-ho with certifications and getting dual credit. I'm almost done. But with CS for All, 17,000 students this year are learning computer science. We trained over 200 teachers in various types of PD, and for the first year, we're up in the number of high schools. So key lessons, design it for everybody. Create your own haves, have relationships, have programs, have vision, have faith. It will happen. And here we have kindergartners coding. Does my heart good. Think about what your programs will look like, what your customers will look like in a few years, now that we have them engaged. Thank you.